story: the shocking secrets I found on my boyfriend's phone. I had always been the type to ignore red flags, convincing myself that love was worth the risk. It was my Achilles heel, a flaw that made me vulnerable in relationships. I had been dating Jake for 6 months, and while he was charming and handsome, there were moments when I sensed something was off. It was in the way he held his phone too tightly, the way he turned it face down whenever I was near. I told myself I was being paranoid. After all, I trusted him, didn't I? However, the gnawing feeling in my gut grew stronger with each passing day. I often brushed it off, attributing it to my insecurities. But deep down, I knew that something was troubling me. Jake had a tendency to be secretive, often disappearing into another room to take calls or text. He would smile and reassure me when I would ask, but there was always an edge to his voice that made my heart race. The first instance that raised my suspicions was during a dinner at his place. We were enjoying a cozy evening, the scent of pasta filling the air. I noticed he received a message that made him tense up. His demeanor shifted instantly. The carefree boyfriend I knew was gone. He excused himself, disappearing into the bedroom for what felt like an eternity. I couldn't help but wonder who he was speaking to and what he was hiding. When he finally returned, he acted as if nothing had happened. His smile a little too bright, his laughter a bit too forced. I shook it off, trying to focus on the moment. But the feeling of unease lingered. It was a cloud hovering over our relationship, and I was unsure of how to dispel it. As the weeks went on, I began to observe Jake more closely. He would often go out with friends, and whenever I inquired about his plans, he would deflect. "Just hanging out," he would say, brushing off my questions with a nonchalant wave. I wanted to believe him, but the pit in my stomach grew heavier with every vague response. I found myself looking for clues, analyzing every text he received and every call he took. My heart sank when I noticed that he always took these calls in private, often pacing back and forth in the other room. Each time I caught a glimpse of his phone, I felt an overwhelming urge to snatch it away and find out what secrets he was keeping. I felt like a detective trying to solve a mystery. But the more I searched for answers, the more elusive they became. One night, I decided to confront my feelings head-on. I had to know the truth. I waited until Jake fell asleep, his breathing steady and calm beside me. The dim light from his phone flickered on the nightstand, a beacon of temptation. My heart raced as I reached for it, the weight of my decision crashing down on me. It felt wrong, an invasion of privacy. But the need for answers was overpowering. As I unlocked his phone, I was immediately struck by the numerous apps he had hidden: dating apps, social media accounts with strange usernames, and a messaging app one didn't recognize. Each one sent a wave of nausea rolling through me. I felt like I was peeling back layers of deceit, and what lay beneath was horrifying. The realization hit me like a brick wall. Jake had been hiding his life from me, and I was just a piece in his twisted game. I scrolled through the messages, my heart pounding louder with each word I read. There were flirty exchanges, jokes about meeting up, and even plans to hang out with someone named Sarah. I couldn't breathe. The betrayal cut deeper than any knife. I felt a mix of rage and heartbreak coursing through me, a tempest of emotions threatening to consume me whole. As I tried to process the betrayal, I stumbled upon a group chat filled with messages from his friends, making crude jokes about their escapades. The last message made my blood run cold. "Jake, just remember to keep your phone on lockdown. You don't want your girl finding out." My hands trembled as I dropped the phone back onto the nightstand, the screen lighting up like a sinister warning. I felt sick to my stomach, the realization that I had been living a lie crashing over me like a tidal wave. I spent the rest of the night tossing and turning, my mind racing with the implications of what I had discovered. How could I confront him? What would I say? I felt paralyzed, the weight of the truth threatening to bury me alive. The next morning, I was a bundle of nerves. My stomach in knots as I tried to act normal around Jake. I watched him move through the kitchen, pouring coffee and chatting about plans for the day. He seemed completely oblivious to the storm brewing inside me. I wanted to scream, to expose him for the fraud he was. But I held my tongue, unsure of how to approach the situation. After a few hours of agonizing silence, I decided to take a walk to clear my head. The sun was shining, but I felt shrouded in darkness. As I strolled through the park, I replayed our moments together, each memory now tainted with betrayal. It felt surreal, as if I were living in a nightmare. I thought about all the times I had let my guard down, all the times I had chosen to trust him, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I had wasted my time on a lie. I returned home feeling more resolved than ever. I needed to confront him. When Jake came home that evening, I steeled myself for the conversation I had been dreading. As we settled onto the couch, I took a deep breath, my heart racing as I prepared to confront the man I had loved, the man I thought I knew. "Jake, we need to talk," I began, my voice trembling with emotion. I watched his expression shift, the smile fading from his face. He looked at me with curiosity and apprehension. And for a moment, I felt a flicker of doubt. What if I was wrong? What if I had misinterpreted everything? But I quickly brushed those thoughts aside. I had seen the truth, and there was no turning back. "I found your phone," I continued, my voice steadier now. "And I saw everything." The air around us grew thick with tension as his eyes widened in disbelief. "You've been hiding things from me, Jake. You've been texting other women and lying about it." His expression changed, a mask of anger replacing the initial shock. "You went through my phone? Are you serious?" He shot back, his voice rising. I could see the defensiveness bubble up inside him, and it only fueled my determination. "Yes, I did," I replied, my voice firm. "I deserve to know the truth. You've been sneaky, and I can't be in a relationship built on lies." He stood up abruptly, pacing back and forth, clearly agitated. "You have no right to invade my privacy like that. You're overreacting. It's not what you think." My heart sank. How could he dismiss my feelings so easily? "Jake, the messages are clear. You were flirting with other women. I can't pretend it doesn't hurt." He continued to pace, his frustration mounting. "You're making it a bigger deal than it is. It's just harmless fun." "Harmless fun?" I exclaimed, my emotions boiling over. "You think it's okay to hide that from me? To flirt with other women while I'm here, trusting you?" He paused, his expression shifting from anger to something resembling guilt. "Look, I didn't mean to hurt you. I didn't want to lose you." "Then why did you lie?" I demanded, tears brimming in my eyes. "Why didn't you just tell me if you were unhappy?" He shook his head, the walls around him coming up again. "You wouldn't understand. I was afraid you'd leave me." I felt a wave of sadness wash over me. I had loved him, trusted him, and he had betrayed that trust in the worst possible way. "I don't think I can do this anymore," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "I can't be with someone who doesn't respect me or our relationship." The silence hung heavy between us as Jake stood there, his expression unreadable. I had never wanted it to come to this, but I knew I had to prioritize my own well-being. I felt a sense of clarity wash over me. I was finally taking control of my life. I moved to grab my things, and I felt Jake's eyes on me, filled with a mixture of regret and anger. "You're really going to end this over some texts?" he asked, disbelief evident in his voice. "Texts that show you don't value me or our relationship?" I replied firmly, "I deserve better than this. And so do you." As I walked out the door, I felt a rush of freedom. A lightness that I hadn't felt in months. The storm inside me had calmed. And I knew I had made the right choice. In the days that followed, I took time to reflect on my journey. I learned that my worth was not defined by someone else's actions. I surrounded myself with friends who uplifted me, filling my life with positivity and love. I started focusing on my passions, rediscovering hobbies that had taken a backseat during my relationship with Jake. The healing process wasn't easy, but I was determined to move forward. I had faced my fears, confronted the truth, and emerged stronger than ever. I began to see the beauty in my independence and the power of self-love. Months later, I found myself sitting in a coffee shop, a warm cup of coffee cradled in my hands as I watched the world go by. The sun was shining, and I felt a sense of peace enveloping me. I was no longer burdened by the weight of Jake's secrets. Instead, I was free to write my own story. I had learned to trust my instincts, to value myself above all else. My experience with Jake had been painful, but it had ultimately led me to a place of strength and resilience. I knew that love would come again, but this time, I would approach it with caution, aware of the red flags that could arise. In that moment, I realized that the most important relationship I would ever have was the one with myself. I had discovered my worth and had the courage to walk away from what no longer served me. The journey had been tumultuous, but it had led me to a brighter future. And for that, I was grateful.